How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. So thank you for seeing me, first of all. I
Thank you for taking the time.
I really enjoyed watching the film because it's drama, it's comedy, it's funny. The hallucinations for me were hilarious. So tell me a little bit about the film first.
Um, yeah, the movie, what can I tell you about the movie? It's really a sort of a story about fathers and sons and fathers and daughters and people doing their best to overcome personal I don't know if trauma is the word, but the difficulties that, fall into every life and to try and not to repeat them. And, our particular hero, Samuel, has some particular problems, and they kind of manifest in these sort of interesting hallucinations that progress as the movie goes along, which I think kind of is a chart, um, you know, showing someone losing their grasp of reality cinematically can be a bit challenging because uh, it's an internal process. And what we wanted to do is bring it outside and make it visual. So that's sort of what we started, with the idea of the hallucinations and how they were sort of working and how they'd progress. But, also it's a visual medium, and it was sort of interesting and fun for us to kind of approach it in that kind of way. And, cinema is the wonderful thing about cinema is you blend pictures and performance and music and and in this instance dance as well. So we kind of wanted to take advantage of all the full paint box, as it were, and as we were throwing stuff on the canvas.
So you wrote it and you directed it as well,
I
right?
did, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I've written every film I've directed. I just sort of how it's
Mm.
that's sort of how it's kind of come about. I've directed a lot of ads that I didn't write, but the movies I tend to write myself.
How did you come up with the idea?
Interesting question. I mean, I'm always kind of interested in relationships between families and between parents and children. It's sort of the primary relationship. And I think at the time, to be honest, I was a single dad and just getting sober myself. So I was sort of interested in that, and then my folks split up when I was a kid. So I was thinking about how did that sort of repeat? And what are kind of ways of not fixing that, but just sort of thinking about it and looking at how things repeat in lives and how you might kind of examine that phenomena and think about ways that things could maybe be different. I think in an art form you're looking at, what have I experienced in my life? What am I thinking about it, and how can I sort of transmit that to other human beings and sort of give them a bit of my experience in a way that's sort of entertaining and that
Mhm.
they can kind of relate to. So yeah, so I had sort of gone through these things and I was like, what's an interesting story that comes about with that? I'm a big Leonard Cohen fan.
Mhm.
Um, and the themes in his music sort of seemed to fit with the themes that the film was concerned with, reality versus fantasy, sort of desire versus reality, and how those kind of things intersect and in good and in not bad, but in different kinds of ways. So that was the kind of thinking of having the musical element, and then that sort of opened up all these other possibilities for the film.
And you've done a few films so far. Did you learn anything different this time round? And what challenges did you face?
What I learned is it's great to make a movie with Gabriel Byrne. That's one thing that I learned. It's I've sort of been lucky throughout my movies to work with really good actors, and that continued on this film, and everyone was so good. So that is, you know, a nice thing to learn that the people you're working with are so talented. I mean, the challenge, we're sort of working in the independent film space. So in a movie like this, I believe we shot in 22 or 23 days. It probably should have been 40, but that's the amount of time we had. And so I've also been very lucky to have kind of incredible crews that I've worked with. And the crews I worked with in Montreal and Ireland were able to kind of work miracles, and we were able to kind of pull it off. But I think, that's the sort of challenge. I think most directors will probably feel the same way, is that there's never enough time, and you're just trying to, accomplish what you can within the physical realities that commerce sort of dictates. So that is the lesson I learn every time I turn on a camera. More
Mm.
time, please.
I think we need more time generally in life, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it applies across the board, but particularly on a movie set when 40 people are waiting for, to do the next thing.
Mhm. So does that timeline of shooting days, does that include the traveling days to Ireland and Canada as well?
That's just actual shooting days. Yeah,
Okay.
production wise, there would have been like 2 or 3 months, because when you're
Mm.
shooting with such a tight schedule, what you try and do is plan as well as you can and execute. So the more time you spend planning things, obviously, you don't really have the luxury of showing up at a location and sort of going, oh, maybe we'll put the camera here, maybe let's run it for a couple of times. You're there, you again, when you work with the actors at the level that I was working with on this film, the films I've worked with, they're already ready to go.
Hmm.
It's not like we have to run it a number of times to have an understanding. So it's just to kind of, you know, show up, understand the job at hand, and execute as quickly as you can.
And where in Ireland and where in Canada was it shot?
So in Canada, it was all in Montreal, where I'm from there. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, but I grew up in Montreal, so I love to get to go home and shoot. And then in Ireland, it was all on the West Coast, sort of in Galway and a bit in Mayo. So and quite far out. It's sort of an interesting thing, you know. In Quebec, obviously, a lot of people speak French, and then when we were in Ireland, the part of Ireland that we were in, a lot of people speak Irish. So it was sort of interesting to kind of
Mhm.
shoot. A film that's principally in English, but in the locales where a second language is, predominant, and there's this sort of interesting other culture sort of
Mhm.
going on. So they're trying to, just, get as much of that feel as we could into the film as well.
Yeah, because I found the different accents really interesting
Mhm.
listening to them in the film. And I really liked that because I felt it was a diverse film just by the fact that it had accents. It wasn't just your typical American accent, you had different accents in there, and I really liked that.
Yeah, and we didn't, we wanted them all to lean into that. I think Breen in particular was a certain kind of Dublin, a certain kind of time, and that's not his natural Irish, lilt. He definitely cultivated a certain kind of strength of accent for Ben, the father, to kind of bring a kind of texture to it, as did sort of, Carole, the young French Canadian actress, was definitely speaking with a very kind of particular Quebecois
Hmm.
type of style,
Hmm.
which is also really good. And listen, I think films are about specific places. Stories might be universal, but films are about specific places and specific people. And the more that the actors can hone in on that specific time, place, and human being and represent that, I do find it makes films more interesting.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we're living in a world that is very diverse, and I think great to have that in the movies.
Yeah, yeah, of course, I agree with you. Well, you
Mhm.
have some great actors there. The acting was really good from everybody. I really enjoyed watching it.
Mhm.
How did you cast?
Just by watching movies. I mean, we obviously we have very good casting directors that we
Mhm.
work with, but I watch a lot. I like cinema, so I watch a lot of films, and I often find there's someone you're struck by, and you remember that, and then when you're thinking of a movie, you have this sort of Rolodex in your mind, and just go to the guy. I mean, Antoine and Carole, I'd seen films that they had done, and they were sort of I think every person in that film was more or less the first actor that we went to. Um,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, again, that's just luck. That's just dumb luck. But I think, I think Gabriel came on first, and when he was involved, and that opened the doors to other people
Yeah.
being interested. So yeah,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because he's excellent, so I can see as to why everybody else followed. But that's really good. They have trust in you as well.
I guess so. That
Yeah.
I don't know about, but they were all very, again, when listen. it's always good to have long conversations about things,
Hmm.
but when you're working on the time constraints we're under, it's very good to have the actors feel comfortable. And I think that's, one thing we're trying to do on set is create a place where everyone feels kind of comfortable that they can talk, but also that they're just there to do their thing
Yeah.
and not to not get in their way, basically, is usually my goal as a director. Sort of get out of the way and let people do what they came to do.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, of course. Visual effects. I enjoyed watching them, and you could see them a lot in the film, but they looked very natural. And especially the scene with the car, that was so realistic. How did you go about getting someone to do them and doing them so realistic?
Yeah, I mean, we did want them to sort of feel very natural and not too, CGI.
Hmm.
I do shoot a lot of ads where they give you more money to sort of work on visual things like that. So I'd learned, I kind of had a sort of background in that I
Hmm.
could sort of bring to indie film. And then, the digital houses that we worked with in Ireland and in Toronto actually is where they did a great job. That particular shot, I mean, we shot that was a little hairy because we were shooting that live up on a cliff. So my principal thing in doing an effect is no one gets hurt. That's
Yeah.
kind of the number one thing. So, we just did it in a way that was far enough from the cliff, and we sped it up a little bit later in post. And then the other way is, in the framing, we shot the actual car going off the cliff quite wide, and that gives you, a lot more latitude to have it look more realistic because you're not as tight on the image,
Hmm.
and it kind of, I like the way that it looked. Just I know I kind of like that sort of visual. So that's sort of the way you approach. Is there a way that you enjoy visually that also can hide the sleight of hand?
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
very because the hallucinations were coming from inside his mind.
Yeah.
I thought it was important that they don't look like computer generated things.
Yeah.
So we were trying to do as many of them in camera as possible, and that's sort of a thing that I learned doing ads. Is if you can, given the preponderance of what do you call it, digital trickery that goes on in the world these days, if you can do it live, I just feel it has a better feel. Like if you go back to a movie like, The Wizard of Oz,
Hmm.
not because they were doing those effects in camera, there's this paradox where they maybe look a little, I don't know if faker is the word, but they seem more real because
Hmm.
somewhere in your brain you understand that there were physical people dressed in monkey
Yeah.
costumes doing those things. I
Yeah.
like that. Not just that, I prefer that sense of reality, even in the fantastic. I find it more interesting and more powerful. So, that was sort of our approach. Whatever we can do in camera, let's do it real.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. And it worked, actually. It did work. Um,
Thank
yeah. So your writing process, because obviously you write and direct, what is your
you.
writing process like?
You know, get up, have a cup of coffee, sit down. I think that's, I do sort of subscribe to that kind of theory of writing. It's just you do it every day, you don't think about it too much, and hopefully, you know, you do what had to be done that day, and then when you wake up the next morning, an idea sort of come to you. But then, once you're sort of done, I do get a number of people to read it. I have a lot of friends that I think, are smart about writing and story. And not all of them work in film, but I think you get their perspectives, see what they have to say, and film is a collaborative medium, and even in the writing process, you kind of there's a period where you're doing it alone, and then you kind of want to open it up and get as many sort of different opinions. So that's kind of the process.
Hmm.
Workmanlike is how I would describe it.
Hmm. And lastly, what are you planning to do next with this film, and where can people watch the film?
Well, it's just come. It's had a very interesting long life. It's played theatrically all around the world, and now it's just coming out in the States. and it will be available on all the major platforms. So it's Amazon, Apple, Fandango. But I think, out in the world, it's available all over the UK, Australia, Taiwan, wherever, Germany. Those lucky people can watch it right now, and then it's coming out in the States on the 26th. So yeah, that's when it can be seen.
And are you planning to do another film after that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a couple that we're just putting together right now. I would
Mm.
describe one as a smaller, more affordable film,
Mhm.
and one as a larger, less affordable film. So yeah, there's a couple in the works.
Perfect. Thank you so much for speaking to me. I really enjoyed speaking to you and learning more about you and the film.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time. Have a great day.
Thank you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.